My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are looking at the motif that Paul sets forth in Romans 8:17 and following. Now remember, Romans 8:17 and following is virtually universally admitted to be directly parallel to 1 Corinthians 15 and Paul's doctrine of the resurrection. Paul in Romans chapter 8 talks about the redemption of the body. Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 talking about the redemption of the body. There are very, very few commentators who differ with that. Now, it's great to see such commentators like Gary DeMar say that the glory that Paul was anticipating was about to be revealed, whatever it was. Gary DeMar says it was about to be revealed. It was near. Well, amen to that. I agree with that 100%. But that means that the resurrection, the redemption of the body, was very near. Now, we find in Romans chapter 8 the motif of suffering. Paul said, if we suffer with him, we shall, or that we may be also glorified with him. He then says, I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is about to be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly awaits for the revealing of the sons of God. Now, I could read the whole thing, but time will not allow. I want you to notice that Paul, in verse 16 or verse 17 here, talks about suffering with Christ to be glorified with Christ. Verse 18, the sufferings of this present time with the glory literally about to be revealed. Now let's focus on this motif of suffering and imminent vindication, imminent relief, imminent glorification. And in this case, this glorification, this vindication is linked with resurrection. They are concurrent events. Now watch this. First of all, I want you to notice Paul's contrast. I reckon that the sufferings, and once again, let me point out, he uses a word here, pathemata, that is not used in the New Testament, unless I've missed something. It is not used of normal human suffering. It does not refer to breaking a foot. It does not refer to having a stroke or a heart attack, experiencing cancer, as my beloved wife has gone through recently. No, that's not the kind of suffering. This is the suffering being that they were experiencing in Christ and with Christ. It is the eschatological suffering to fill up the measure of sin. But notice Paul's contrast and his statement of the now time, the suffering of the now time. As N.T. Wright points out in his book, Paul and the Faithfulness of God, his 2-volume work from 2013 and 14. Paul, in the book of Romans, sets forth a contrast between then, and that then was the Old Testament time of expectation. In the last days, at that time, it shall come to pass. But Paul, in Romans, contrasts that then time of expectation with his now time of realization. Paul says at one time God overlooked the sins of the past, but now has set forth Christ to be a propitiation for our sin. Romans 3:24 and following. And now he is focusing once again on the now time. That's Paul's first century now time. It is not our now time, because you and I are not suffering with Christ's last days suffering. And let me drive this home. Notice that Paul said the glory that is about to be revealed. I know there's a lot of controversy over the Greek word melo in the infinitive, but the Blas de Brunner grammar of New Testament Greek says melo in the infinitive indicates imminence. And I've got commentator after commentator after commentator in my library, in my entire office here is nothing but books, and the library in there is nothing but books, in which Greek scholars of world renown admit and say that melo with the infinitive indicates imminence. And someone says, well, I can show you a couple of passages where it doesn't. What does that prove? Folks, even if you could demonstrate that there are a couple of exceptional usages of melo with the infinitive that do not indicate and demand imminence, that does not destroy the primary meaning. I mean, it's like saying, I give this illustration at times, okay, Angus cows are black. Oh, wait a minute. I saw a white Angus cow yesterday, therefore Angus cows are not black. You don't destroy the primary meaning of a word by finding an exceptional definition to that word. I mean, that's not good hermeneutic. It is absolutely not good linguistics. And so I get amused and, I get a little bit, not really perplexed, but mostly amused when I hear commentators abusing hermeneutic, abusing exegesis, abusing linguistics by saying, well, melo might mean at hand in some passages, but I've found a couple of places where it can't mean that. Therefore, when Paul uses melo in the infinitive, talking about eschatology, it can't mean at hand. Well, what about in the passages where Paul, and Jesus, by the way, used melo in the infinitive with other words of imminence? Are you going to say, oh, well, no, it can't mean imminence? Well, once again, that's not good hermeneutic. It is an abuse of linguistics, and it's really bad exegesis. So if we follow the commentators, if we follow the lexicons, and I've got one shelf down here full of lexicons, virtually every single one of them gives the primary definition of melo as about to be on the point of. And they say it's sometimes a periphrasis for the future. Okay, how far in the future? The passages where melo is used upon careful examination and used in comparison with other passages speaking of the same identical event where words of powerful imminence are used. And what that means for us is that Paul says, I reckon that the suffering of this present time, that's Paul's present time, are not, that's in the present, are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is about to be revealed in us. As we continue our study of this motif of suffering vindication, suffering glorification, suffering resurrection, we will see that the suffering and the glorification, suffering was first century, glorification, vindication, resurrection were likewise of necessity first century events. Now, if you want a little book, simple to read, extremely powerful. By the way, this has been used in college courses to teach hermeneutic. Go to my website, order the book In Flaming Fire, a passage that we're going to spend some time on later, because it deals extensively with the motif suffering, vindication, suffering, glorification, suffering, glorification, vindication, parousia, first century parousia, and it does it in an extremely powerful way. So go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, and order the book In Flaming Fire. You will, I'm telling you, it'll blow you away at how clear, how undeniable the link between first century suffering and first century parousia / resurrection truly is. we've got more on suffering, glorification, suffering, resurrection. So we'll see you on the flip side.